In Dungeons and Dragons, it's very easy to get caught up in big damage numbers and protective spells and all sorts of things like that. But not a lot of people talk about where you are on the battlefield and your ability to move about it. Because let's face it, where you are has a great impact on how effective your action will be.
Join us for part 2 of our series on making a monopoly of the action economy. This week, we're going to be going over the value of movement and position. And again, we're going to teach you how to dominate combat and force your DMs to watch our videos so they can keep up with you.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another J&J tabletop video. And like we said in the intro, we're going to be talking about just how much of an impact movement and position has on combat in Dungeons and Dragons. Josh, can you give me an example of what it looks like when you're out of position?
If you're out of position, you could be some sort of melee fighter. Maybe you have your sword and board, and you're in there and you're trying to fight, but maybe you didn't count things out right or whatever, and you're suddenly you're out of range and you're not able to actually make that attack. And suddenly your action is useless. Your turn is useless because you should have been able to attack this thing, but you used your movement poorly and now you can't. Or maybe you used your position poorly as an archer and you got up to this really cool spot and you're like, oh, perfect. Nobody's going to be able to hit me from up here. I have cover, I have whatever, I have this. And then suddenly you're like, oh, but I don't have line of sight. And that's why no one can hit me, but I can't hit them either.
Also, along those lines, cover's kind of a big deal. Cover enhances your AC against incoming attacks, which has the potential to make enemy actions useless. If somebody attacks you and misses, that action has yielded no result. You spent money and got no return, no ROI.
Yeah, cover is like a free shield spell. It just takes some good planning and movement and position. Speaking of cover, if you were on your turn and you're trying to plan out where that good spot is, where that good position is to end up, just ask your DM. Say, hey, would I get cover if I went here? Or is this wall, like, how tall is that? Like, I'll ask those questions, and preferably ask them before you use your movement, because it's just gonna make things nicer for everyone, you and the DM. The DM's going to feel bad if you used your movement to get to a place because you had a miscommunication or misunderstanding.
It's especially helpful to do that before because also you don't know if there's other triggers or things that could happen, and maybe there's a surprise they have in store for you. And maybe I'm making a mountain out of a molehill, but at the same time, it can save everybody's time and energy and effort if you can ask beforehand. Plus, you also get to make an informed decision on where you move, so that's just kind of in your own benefit. But Josh, we talked about roles in the first video of this series. So, what does each role kind of look to do with their movement? Like, what would make a striker succeed?
This could change based on what rules you're using at your table, right? So we'll say flanking, for instance. If you use flanking at your table, try to flank, because if they could flank, then they get advantage on their attacks. And if they get advantage on their attacks, then they're probably going to hit. That means they're probably going to do damage. And I don't know if you watched the first video, but that's what strikers do.
Damage good.
Flanking specifically is particularly important for rogues. Once they get that advantage, their sneak attack triggers.
You want to make sure that you at least have an ally nearby so you can get that sneak attack. Position is really important for a rogue.
But I would say it's most important for a rogue. And rogues and tanks.
They make a great combination. Tanks for nothing on that transition, Danny.
I feel like I set you up. I said rogues and tanks.
You did. You did. You did a great job. And speaking of tanks, typically their job is going to be to make enemy actions less effective or useless altogether because they have that high AC, lots of hit points to absorb damage. So they need to be more seen than the rest of the party. They need to be that obvious threat that should scare an enemy and make sure that the target is on them. Sometimes it's almost like being reckless actually is the best move here. It's not always the case because you want to just be more seen than the rest of your party. Like if it's a stealth mission, not being seen is still a good thing. But typically, they should try to be the center of attention as much as they can.
I know you bards out there, you want to be the center of attention, but not in combat. Let the tank be the center of attention in combat. You'll thank him. You'll tank him, right?
Thanks for nothing, Josh.
Let the tanks give you the support that you deserve. while you can control and support in your own way. So let's talk about the support and control roles. Realistically, support and control are going to be they're going to go hand in hand. You want some sort of cover because you're probably like a glass cannon or just glass. So cover and line of sight is going to be very important for you. You want to be able to avoid enemy attacks and you want to be able to see your enemies so that you could make attacks or see your friends so that you could give them whatever bonuses that you need to get them. So make sure your support and control abilities can be used, but stay protected. Protect yourself so that you as a healer can continue healing other people and you don't have to worry about you and they don't have to worry about you. They could be out on the front line doing what they do best. Strikers out there striking and tankers out there tanking.
A lot of times the support character and to a degree the control characters, you can almost look at them as like the heart of the party, right? That's usually where the plan is flowing from. The hands and the arms are doing the work, but they get their power and energy from the heart. So Josh, one of the biggest criticisms about monks, and we have a monk in our Ancient Relics and Hoki Religions playthrough. Monks and rogues, things can get kind of lost in the mix. And what I mean by that is you see the barbarian and the paladin hitting with great weapon master and smiting, and the fighters getting 1,000 attacks and action surging to do it again. And monks are often overlooked because they don't have the big damage numbers, but they do something better than all of the rest.
The sheer power of being able to get all over that battlefield, at some point, that halfling monk is going to have a faster movement speed than a horse. Don't
It's
quote me
nuts.
on that, but I'm pretty sure it's true. Speed is still a power. It's just different, and you have to look at things differently for the same reason that people choose the mobile feat. And I do think that you should look at the mobile feat, but being able to actually move around and get all over the battlefield just gives you options. If your monk is kind of a tank, right? If I don't know if monks tank, but if you're a tanky monk and you're trying to tank, then it gives you that opportunity to fly to the other side of the battlefield and engage in combat with whatever enemy that is so that they're going to take an opportunity attack if they leave your reach. Or you're going to be able to zoom right past that whatever other stuff is happening so that you could fight the guy and do the damage on the guy that you need to do the damage on.
Sometimes your best ability is your availability. And when your fighter and barbarian and paladin are trying to keep up, maybe the bad guy's getting away and you're able to catch up to them because you're the monk. And the other interesting thing about it is one of their bread and butter abilities is that stunning strike. If they can run up to somebody, stunning strike, run up to someone else, stunning strike, run up to someone else, stunning strike. Now all of a sudden there's 3 targets that the rogue can be like, ooh, I've got options. And rogues and monks really, their ability to move around the battlefield unhindered, faster, they can very easily get lost in the mix, but it has tremendous value that they're able to put themselves in a position to succeed more often than any other class in the game. And that's not something you should overlook.
That makes me think of, I know that I talk about this character all the time, but it makes me think of Marcus because I gave Marcus the mobile feat. My big, beefy Battlemaster fighter with the pole arm and the plate armor was able to fly along the battlefield. And one really cool thing that you get when you make a melee attack against a creature, you don't provoke opportunity attacks from that creature for the rest of the turn. So you have this freedom of movement along the battlefield. If somebody's in your reach and you have to fight them, then here's my one attack. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to get myself into that position so I could either tank or so I could fight the big bad. Don't sleep on mobile. I get that's just the moral of the story. Don't sleep on it. Movement is so important.
And particularly with fighters, that pairs so well with Action Surge. We made a video about that. You should check it out.
There's other abilities that you could get that'll change how you interact with combat and with movement. Teleporting would be one of them, right?
I don't think I recognized how much I enjoy teleporting until I've been playing Veil. Really, any movement type, swimming speed, if you're in the water, you're going to feel that. Flying is incredible. It's hard to quantify because it can help you bypass terrain. You can get behind enemy lines. You can escape deadly situations or like being grappled. I mean, Veil got entangled once he failed his saving throw. The very next turn, he's just like, all right, Misty Step. And then he shot the caster that got him with entangle. It was a pretty cool moment. There's also been examples in the bridge fight that we had that would have taken him about maybe 3 full turns if he kept shooting his bow, maybe even more to get on the front lines to help out Echo. One use of Misty Step and he was right in the mix and he was able to get there. So teleporting, it it breaks rules. And when we talk about things like the action economy, things like action surge, quicken spell, using your bonus action like in the cunning action of the rogue, all of these things break rules and break the norms that other people just have to deal with and you don't. And that's what makes you special and gives you a lot of power and a lot of ways that you can dictate the fight on your terms. So speaking of having the ability to break rules, I mean, most of this video has been feels like it's centered on the player, and we made a video about dungeon masters and how breaking rules can affect the game, and really, let's face it, in some ways it is cheating. But Josh, how does movement factor into a dungeon master's prep? What kinds of things should they be thinking about when they are making, I don't know, encounters or environments, whatever they're designing?
We've talked about this like a lot in other videos, so I'm gonna say if you want in-depth information, check out those playlists. However, really you should be thinking about the terrain and how you could make some sort of battle map or terrain that is going to be fun and challenging, interesting, or memorable. Obviously, you're going to have enemy combatants on the board. What if the terrain itself is a challenge, right? What if the terrain itself is something that your players have to overcome? For one, it's going to make things really interesting for them, and they're really going to have to think about movement and position and all of those sorts of things, and like, oh, should I use my teleport and all that kind of stuff, because the terrain is difficult, let's say.
Well said.
But thank you, thank you. The other side of that is if the DM prepares some sort of terrain that is like a big disadvantage to the players by smart movement, smart positioning, smart usage of abilities that break the rules, like, you know, like teleporting and like the mobile feat, if you use those correctly, then suddenly the players have now taken advantage of this terrain, and now they're using it against the enemies, because if it's a disadvantage to the players, it could be a disadvantage to the enemies too.
And when I'm the dungeon master, I'm so proud when my players do that. Like they do the old Uno reverse card, like, haha, you
Yep.
thought it, but no, you have to deal
Yep.
with that. You know, a really great example, I think, of how much terrain can be fun and challenging and movement types. Watch the Cryovane fight from our Dragon of Icespire Peak playthrough. The terrain played a very big factor, position, all of that. That fight in particular, the way it just kind of played out, position was huge.
That really is such a good lesson of good positioning and bad positioning, because there is a point where I almost get all of us killed in one move because of a bad position movement. But then there's plenty of other moments before that and after that where we have really good positioning and like very intentional positioning, and that is absolutely a very good fight to check out. It was also fun. It was very fun.
I enjoyed it. If you found this video helpful, go ahead down and hit the like button, because likes are free and it helps the channel. And if you're interested in learning about the first video in this series where we go over what each role is looking to do and how they succeed, that's probably on screen now. And depending on when you watch this video, there's a good chance that the bonus action video that we're going to release next week is also on screen. So thank you so much for watching. We hope you have a good day.